first senior speech is Tasso Karras.
Good morning. Before I begin, let me thank all of you who have made my high school experience an unforgettable one, and to my parents who have given me everything I've ever needed in my life. A quote I once heard goes, quote, "Life is uncertain, death is certain," end quote. Your body is born to die. We call it growing up, then growing old, but it is just a single process of maturing, developing, and evolving ultimately towards inevitable death. We are not used to contemplating death or coming to terms with it. But what happens after death has been a question that has never been truly answered. What we usually do is avoid it entirely, to live as if we are never going to die. Life cannot be lived to its fullest with the fear of death constantly plaguing your mind. To put it another way, even though you might not think about death too much during high school, the idea of death can shape the way you act. Death has not directly changed the way I act, but I have discovered a tangent to that thought that has made my high school experience the best it can be. So before I go deeper, just know that when you recognize death, then will you find yourself able to enjoy the pleasures of life. Death and its perception changed the way I live and my attitude towards life. To explain, let me give you a brief history of myself. I was born and raised in Chalfont, Pennsylvania, 15 miles north of where we sit today. According to Tom Hogan's MapQuest theorem, Chalfont is only 5 minutes away from Chestnut Hill. With the generous help of Mike Del Grand, whom I cannot thank enough, I chose to come to CHA, now SCH. But I chose to come because of one individual, my youngest brother, Andrew. My brother was diagnosed with severe epilepsy when he was only 3 months old. Epilepsy is a brain disorder in which a person has repeated seizures over time. A seizure is an episode of disturbed brain activity that causes changes in attention or behavior. Anthony is the definition of a trooper, suffering multiple seizures a day while taking many different pills and medications. My brother's condition is so severe that he hasn't learned how to talk, even though he's only 12 years old. It chokes me up to think that he cannot live what we call a normal life. You see, my brother can't score the game-winning goal in that championship game. He can't go out to Chipotle before the big dance. He can't be alone, and he can't talk to someone if he needs to. He cannot help himself. However, there is one thing he can do, which outweighs everything he cannot do. He can inspire. He inspired me to want to become a neurologist so I can work with my brother the rest of my life. And although my brother is not dying, the condition of my brother has allowed me to not fear what I cannot change, rather embrace it and allow me to change my attitude on life. His handicap has made me realize the potential we all have as human beings, whether handicapped or not. The idea that someone can have such a large impact on the way you are has shaped the way I act. We are born into an everlasting race against time, searching for a purpose along the way. Our time here on earth is horribly short, and we constantly find ourselves questioning how to make the most of it. I believe every one of you has the ability to create your own purpose. Life is simply deciding how we spend our time and who we spend it with. For me, it's deciding to help my brother who cannot help himself. And I encourage all of you to do something similar with your lives. Be inspired. Take everything that happens in your life and let that drive you to become a better person. Take advantage of the time you have and don't take anything for granted. Although death is certain, there are times in our life where we find ourselves thinking we will never die. Those moments that render us limitless. I am writing this speech to tell you that high school is about finding those moments as often as you can. One day, you will be standing here in my position, wondering where all of the time went. You may not remember that really hard calculus quiz you took today. You may not remember that Hamlet essay. You will remember the memories you make with the people you care about the most. You're going to remember that Friday night basketball game, cheering as loud as possible. You're going to remember playing your last sports game in high school, possibly for the rest of your life. You're going to remember being a part of something larger than yourself. And one day, these will all be stories you will look back at and think of all of the time in between. Those pictures from homecoming will one day become nothing more than old tattered pages in the yearbook. Those friends in those pictures may or may not even be your friends anymore. But here, right now, these moments are not stories. This is all happening. That moment when you and your friends are driving down Easton Road on the way to grab a bite to eat at Golden Crust. That moment when you see all of the fans at the game you've been waiting for all year. That moment when you nail that line in the play. That moment when you all recite the Devil's Chant on a Friday morning. That moment. That moment in the middle of the night under the sky when you were all together, listening to that song during that talk with the people you care about the most. I swear, in that moment, we are infinite. Find that moment, cherish that moment, and let it carry you for the rest of your life. With that moment, we can accomplish anything. Thank you.